So in this one we have a football being kicked. We have lots of sports problems. Goes up in the air and comes back down. And we know this angle is 47 degrees. And the initial speed is 20.1 meters per second. And you're being asked to find how high does it go. So we're looking for final displacement in the y direction. Now we know that this velocity is not x direction or y direction. It is at 47 degrees. But we do have the tools to be able to break that into x and y. And here's our theta, and our theta is equal to 47 degrees. So we can do cosine of theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And we will get the initial velocity in the x direction is 13.7. And in the y direction, we can do the sine of theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. And we can get the initial velocity in the y direction is 14.7. So now we can list what we know in the x direction and in the y direction. So in the x direction, the velocity, and I'm not going to put initial on here because there's no acceleration in the x direction. So this is every velocity we ever have. 0. Our initial displacement is 0. We don't know our range. We could find it if we were asked to, but we aren't in this case. Now in this case we are going to say it's initial because it does change. And since we're going to say positive and positive, this value is positive and our acceleration is negative because it is down towards the earth. We know that our initial displacement is 0 and we are asked to find our final displacement. We're told to ignore air resistance because in reality air resistance would help decrease these velocities in the x direction and in the y direction because of friction. But those are very, very small differences, and at this stage in our career we don't have enough math to do that correctly. We can find this if we find out how long it takes to get to the peak. So when our final velocity is 0, what is our time? And you might notice that you could use the third equation and skip having the time, but I just usually do it this way because I remember these two equations off the top of my head because we use them so much. But you are welcome to do it either way. There's almost always more than one way to solve a problem. So if you don't do it the way I do it, but you still get the exact same answer, your way is almost certainly valid. It's just different. So we get negative 14.7 equals negative 9.8 t. And if we divide both sides by 9.8, our negative signs cancel out. We get t equals 1.5. So our football's in the air 1.5 seconds until the peak, which means that it's totally in the air 3 seconds. Now we want to know our final displacement at the peak. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. And we're going to use that second equation. And it's important to know what direction we're talking about We're talking about the y direction because we want to know this. In fact, we didn't use any of this at all, did we? But that's okay. So we have x equals 0 plus 14.7 meters per second times 1.5 seconds meters plus 1/2 a t squared. Then we scroll down just a little bit more. You get 22.05. And we have meters plus negative 11.025. And we end up with meters again because the second squared cancel each other out. And then if we add these two numbers, we get 11.025. And if we look at significant figures, our degrees had two significant figures, 3, 3, and 2. So we're going to round to two significant figures. And we are going to go up 11 meters. Now please try some of the practice problems below and please ask if you need help. This is as hard as motion in 2 dimensions gets, so don't be embarrassed if you do need help or you do have questions. I'm more than happy to check a problem before you're done with it or to check an assignment before you've done all of them. If you've done one and you want to kind of see how you're doing it, please feel free to email it to me and I will check that one and let you know how you're doing so you know if you're on the right path. Because I know it's very, very frustrating if you do 3 or 4 of these for an assignment and then submit them and they're all wrong because of one misconception you had at the beginning. So please try the practice problems and check your answers below or do some work and send them to me and ask me questions. I'm here to help you as much as you'll allow.